Welcome back to another episode of the Young Rich podcast. Today, I hope everybody's having a great day today. Today's going to be a great action-packed day. Game 6 of the NHL Stanley Cup is tonight. Obviously, Connor McDavid, I'm hoping that they could force 7 because, again, I'm not a big hockey fan. I'm not a big hockey guy. But when I see somebody this young, somebody like Connor McDavid with the expectations of being great and being put into those types of shoes, the great hockey players, and him being supposed to be one of the best players we've seen in a very long time, so I'm always rooting for those guys to get it done, and to do it being down 0-3 in that type of fashion would be absolutely insane. Listen, just like a huge shout out to Connor McDavid for what he's been doing these past couple of days. I mean, the last 2 games he's been considered, I don't even know the correct terminology. From what I was told, he scored 8 points in the last 2 games, 3 goals, 5 assists is how I heard the announcers say it. So I hope that is correct. And, hockey fans, don't come at me too crazy if that doesn't sound right. But from what I heard from the announcers when I was listening to the game and watching, that's basically what happened. And Connor McDavid has absolutely taken over these past couple games. Obviously, Edmonton has come out with a lot of different energy, playing a lot faster. Florida Panthers, from what I've heard, is a more, veteran team, an older team that's been there, done that. And this was supposed to be their year to get it done compared to Edmonton, and to lose 2 games straight like that in a upsetting fashion, losing 8-1, very similar to Dallas and Boston, when they had that Game 4 win, must win. So, hoping for Connor McDavid to continue the dominance. I would love to see a Game 7 just because the build-up, the storylines would be absolutely great. Great for hockey, great for the fans. Because I know a lot of people are talking about playoff puck is different than obviously regular season, and it's a different environment, and it's like a must-see thing. I know a lot of people are hyping it up, so I've been paying a lot more attention, specifically when the Stanley Cup came around, obviously, because hockey's one of those things it's hard for me to get into with a lot of other things I watch. But also another thing that I've been actually currently trying to be getting into is soccer, right? I was having a conversation with my coworkers the other day, and we were talking about soccer and how the divisions work, and because I know the base idea and things about soccer, the how certain every country's got their own leagues and like that, and then you have the Champions League, we have the divisions, you can get relegated, and then all these things, so I was keeping up with it. And then obviously there was a watch party going on where I was working, and then so obviously I was able to watch Argentina, which I watched Argentina that win the World Cup last year, something I paid attention for. And the atmosphere is amazing. It was the most entertaining World Cup final I've ever watched. I've only watched one, so it was pretty insane. The commentators, the announcers, the energy of the crowd was just absolutely wild. Something that I've never, it's hard to experience something like that. You like to, something I can compare it to is college football. Certain programs just have that type of atmosphere that it's just, no matter what, no matter how bad your team is, everyone's going out there to support. You're putting on for your team. You're out there. A lot of people get very competitive when it comes to college sports and representing their teams. They want to be the best fans out there. So, definitely something like that is it's what it's comparable to, but there's nothing like it, truly. That soccer energy, that soccer culture is just insane, and I didn't even know, because I'm a Bay Area guy, right? I'm out here, San Jose area, right? And I didn't even know the San Jose Earthquakes were in that pro team, I thought it was like a little lower division tier team, and to find out that they were in the MLS, right, is something that's crazy. MLS, I think that's the right league, right? The American League, the one that's Messi's playing in, because he's playing with Miami, things like that. So yeah, so obviously, I'm trying my best to learn and get into soccer, just based on the fact that it's like worldwide. It's one of the biggest sports in the world, right? Everybody watches it. We had a lot of people pull up for the watch party where I was working at. Come in. A lot of people pulled up in Argentina gear, and so it was great to see the atmosphere. People show up, get together in San Jose, all going for the same country and things like that, and the same player. So it was great to see stuff like that. Definitely some things I wish I could see the NFL and NBA be like. Obviously the NBA has great fan bases, so does the NFL, but that soccer atmosphere is just a little bit different. I don't know if it's just the crowd being in unison or what it is, but it's something definitely to pay attention to. But To get started in today's topic of discussion, it is officially the NBA offseason, right? This is the time where all these hypothetical trades and trade finders and every simulation you're running, everybody's talking trades, what teams need to do to improve, because it is now officially the time to get better. The NBA offseason is one of the quickest off seasons we have, right? It's not like the NFL where it goes week by week, day by day. You have your deadlines and you have your things to make moves. It is a lot faster paced than that. I mean, we're going to be discussing a couple key moves coming up, right? And then obviously I'm wearing a Cade Cunningham jersey, which is exactly where we're going to get into right now, is the Detroit Pistons, right? I mean, listen, you just fired Monty Williams, a guy who was a questionable head coach, but he had a couple great years at Phoenix. He was a part of the rebuild guy, and then you were able to, make a team that made the championship, made it to the finals, unfortunately, which was up 2-0. You had a chance to win that series against Giannis and the Bucks, and then Giannis turned into the best player in the world that season, and then after that you followed up with a 60-win season. Unfortunately that's when you had that game 7's mishap, against Luka and Dallas, and then ever since then Monty Williams has just not been a part of Phoenix, right? And so obviously Detroit offers him this mega bag contract, and from what I was hearing is that Detroit was just kept throwing him money, because apparently he didn't want to accept the trade or accept the contract. He didn't want to be a head coach for the Detroit Pistons due to the fact that his wife did have cancer and he wanted, all this stuff. And it turns out that this contract is $75 million contract not only made him one of the highest paid coaches in the league, but he had a lot of, he had private jet accessibility, he had health insurance and all this other stuff going on, the whole 9 yards. He had it made for him, right? And to see how poorly he ran this team, it kind of makes sense hearing the whole situation, getting, that Detroit basically just kept off raising the price to bring it in. They just got it to the point where there was so much money on the table that he just could not say no, life-changing money. And it's all guaranteed at the end of the day, with new, management positions and head of operations, things have been positions have been changed. New people have been put in those positions, because this has been a very losing franchise that's been losing for years, right? So you've got to change it up, and you got the okay from the owner to forget about salaries, forget about the fees and having to pay all these people, the luxury cap, whatever. We are going out here, we're going to clean slate. Whoever we don't want around, And I am a big Detroit Pistons fan. They are my number 2 team. I'm a big fan of Cade Cunningham. That's the guy that I've just fell in love with his rookie year, and I've been supporting him ever since. So you can consider me a Detroit Pistons fanatic. I'm watching 85% of their games. When Cade Cunningham's not playing, I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes I don't really watch because there's no need for me to watch. That team is very, very bad, and I see that. And I know they got some great pieces, and I don't understand how they haven't been able to put it together. Obviously, this year you had Monty Williams try to play Killian Hayes majority of the season, which was, we already knew this guy was a bust. We already knew this guy was one of the worst players in the NBA, right? And you still were trying to get him out there and find something out of him that nobody else seen, So you wasted a lot of time. You made Jaden Ivey sit and not get into the flow of things. You were making him come off the bench, and you were hurting him in a way, to develop as a player. And so, there's a lot of questionable decisions. You started the year, Bogdanovich was hurt, right? You didn't have Isaiah Stewart, so you were kind of missing 2 of your starters during that time where you went on that run and you were losing all these games, and you became the worst team in NBA history with the longest NBA losing streak in NBA history, right? So, listen, Cade Cunningham does a lot for this team, right? And he is a great player. I still think he has the potential to be one of the best players in the league, like a top 10 player. I do believe that. I believe he has the ability to score at that type of level, and his playmaking ability, right, is something so. The fact that he was able to play make the way he did in Detroit was insane, and teams were throwing 2 or 3 bodies at him every single game. It was Cade Cunningham versus the world. You had nobody out there that can go out there and shoot. You had nobody out there that's going to help and be a consistent second option, and when you're playing a team like that and all you have to do is throw 3 guys at the best player, it's so unfortunate for him, for Cade. You see a lot of people on social media, they're talking about Free Cade Cunningham. Let's get this guy somewhere else. This guy needs help. Somebody please come help Cade Cunningham. And I'm a part of that team. I'm a part of that crowd. I feel so bad for Cade Cunningham because he is a great player. He has some of the worst spacing in the NBA, and he still is so efficient at what he does. He can still score like the best of them. Multiple 40-point games, when he was trying to break that losing streak, and they still ended up losing, So it was just, this guy, I believe, has the potential to have a superstar takeover ability, like how Anthony Edwards dominates the game. I think Cade Cunningham can take over a game like that. I'm not saying he's as talented as Anthony Edwards, but I do think that he has the potential to take over like that because you've seen it in games, right? Where it's Cade Cunningham coming down the court, scoring the next 14 points or scoring and assisting on the next 20 to close out the game. It's Cade Cunningham doing everything for this team. And the second half, post All-Star break, he was absolutely phenomenal. His efficiency went up, his points per game went up, his assists went up. He was that mid-range, magician. He was just hitting everything from the mid-range, so efficient, so pure. He's a 6'6" guard, and he's just so hard to guard, and he's capable of playing defense and doing everything you want from a number one guy on your team, I'm a big fan of Jalen Duren. He's going to give you a double-double machine. Jaden Ivey, I'd like to see more. I'd like to see him be a bit better. Obviously, Asar Thompson's one of those guys. Very great defender, great rebounder. But other than giving you elite defense, he's not giving you anything on offense, and that's a huge issue. And then Isaiah Stewart is a great 3-and-D guy. He's actually probably one of their better, more valuable players on this team. His ability to hit the three, play defense, rebound, and, play his role very, very well. I really do like him on that team. I appreciate him a lot more not having him in there that first half of the season when he did sit out due to injury, But looking at this new directions of the Detroit Pistons is the head coaching candidates, right? And the three people that I did see in the discussion to be the head coach of the Detroit Pistons of the future. I got Sam Cassell, assistant coach for the Boston Celtics. Again, I'm not going to say or not I know exactly who every one of these guys are, but I've heard a lot of great things about them. Sam Cassell has been a very highly regarded assistant coach in the league. He's also been discussed in other coaching positions before, so this is something great to see. And then obviously James Borrego, he coached for Charlotte the year they went 42-39, and he ended up losing his job after that season, after making it to the play-in, and and that was like their best the Charlotte Hornets have ever looked. Since I've been around and really been locked in the LaMelo Ball era, that was the best they looked. They had Miles Bridges, they had Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, and who was their third big guy? It wasn't PJ Washington, but I forget who it was. They had a third guy. Oh, Terry Rozier. They were all averaging 20 plus points per game through the last 2 months of the season. They were playing absolutely phenomenal. Listen, this was before LaMelo Ball had even took another step in his offensive game, and Miles Bridges, what he did last year, and then you had Brandon Miller, what could have been for James Borrego and the Charlotte Hornets. So I think that's a very respectable coach. I think he did a great job in Charlotte. Unfortunate how he ended up his career. I think that'd be a great guy to build something around this Detroit Pistons team. And then you have Chris Quinn, assistant coach for Miami. Again, another guy that's been under Spo for so long. He's been, I respect that you've been under Spo in this Miami Heat culture. I think anybody in that culture that sees how Spo gets it done and how he gets the best from his players, I think that type of guy can go into a system like Detroit and you can go out there and get the best of your players. Obviously, I don't know if this guy's going to be as good or even capable of being close to the level that Spo is, right? But, so having someone like that where you get the best out of guys that aren't supposed to be that great or aren't supposed to be anything, it's something I'd really like to see for this Detroit Pistons team, And then you start talking about your future, this free agency, this offseason. What moves can you do that helps this team and helps Cade Cunningham, adds to that spacing, And there was a couple key moves that I was reading about that I thought these four guys could really help and benefit this team. The first one is Daniel Hunter, right? Daniel Hunter. They have fallen in love with Jalen Johnson over these last 2 years, and he's been a great player, remarkable basketball player, right? They fell in love with Jalen Johnson. They're kind of, him and Bogdanovich, or Daniel Hunter and Bogdanovich are two of those guys that are being talked about in trade conversations. They've been talked about being moved for the past couple years, and now Daniel Hunter, it seems like this is the year to do it. You don't know what you're going to do with trading DeJounte, so now you can get a guy like this who can go out there and help Detroit, right? You get a guy who can shoot, he's not going to be one of the best shooters ever, but he can go out there, he can space the floor a little bit, he can be a third guy or a second guy depending on that team in that situation, so I think that'd be a great addition. And then another guy was John Collins, who I think it could be a great addition, right? Because his best years in Atlanta, you winning it with Trae Young, where you were hitting the three at a very efficient clip, I believe, and he kind of fell off his last year in Atlanta, and then he got traded to Utah, and then Utah discussed him as, I thought he did a great job in Utah with what he did. He played a lot of good basketball, was rebounding well, was shooting well, scoring, playing alongside Lauri Markkanen. That Utah Jazz team was very scrappy. Young, heading in a different direction, and I think John Collins, with his ability to shoot, again, stretch the floor, and he can still rebound. You can play small ball 5 with him. I think that'd be a great addition for this team because he really just needs somebody else who can shoot at somewhat of an efficient clip to help space the floor for Cade Cunningham. Get him some more open looks. Get him some more space, right, to let him go to work, right? And then you have Max Christie, who is my Los Angeles Lakers guy. I think he's an absolute stud, right? For those of you who don't know who Max Christie is, he's a very good 37% three-point shooter in his career in LA. Obviously, he's not getting a lot of PT due to the fact that you have Austin Reeves, who blossomed into who he is, and you added D'Angelo Russell, who in the regular season turns into, young Kyrie Irving, So, there's a lot of issues with that, and then there's just no really space for him, you know what I'm saying, to really go out there and get minutes, especially with LeBron running the PG. He is our playmaker, our primary playmaker, so it just hurts him a little bit. I would love to see him get more PT. I think he plays great defense, phenomenal defense, and he can shoot for you. A great 3-and-D guy who I think is only going to continue to get better and better the more he plays. And going to a young team like Detroit, again, that's a great situation for him to thrive against someone like Cade Cunningham, and you can get him for absolutely nothing, and he can turn into a great player for you. The potential is there for Max Christie. And the last guy is Davion Mitchell, right? Davion Mitchell gives you a secondary point guard who I know the three-point shot and the scoring aspect of his game has not blossomed into what people had hoped, but he's going to give you great defense. He can play make for you, and if every other night he can hit a couple threes, that's something great for this team. You don't need right now, you're not in the market if you're the Detroit Pistons to go out here and get an absolute killer and add him to your roster. You won 17 games last year, right? You need to add little pieces and just continue to get better and build, right? And a guy like Donovan Mitchell, again, you can get it for cheap. He's going to be great defensively. He can play make. He can be a guy off the bench. He can be a better version of Killian Hayes on this team, which is something that Killian Hayes was a guy that had a potential to do something and benefit this team. And I would love that addition, right? And then you talk about free agent or other trade acquisitions. I've heard a lot of people talk about, get a Tobias Harris-like guy, a guy who is like the number 3 scorer, number 4 scorer on somebody else's team, and you bring him over here. Somebody that's kind of like, I wouldn't say washed, but a little bit later in his years, but you can come out here and you could let somebody like Tobias Harris come out here and be free-flowing and kind of just come out here and go get buckets and not have to worry about nothing else, and you could possibly get the best from Tobias Harris in a situation like that. So who else other than Tobias Harris? Nothing else comes to mind, other than the guys I mentioned. But a guy like Tobias Harris could be beneficial. You bring him back to Detroit, and then you come out here and you get a guy who can just maybe give you 15 points per game alongside Cade. Just, again, everything helps Cade Cunningham because all he needs is some true consistent support. And Tobias Harris wants to get those shots up. He wants to take those shots, all right? So we're not asking him to go out here and help the Detroit Pistons win a championship, but we can out here help Cade Cunningham and help this team take the next step in the right direction. Okay? And again, before I move on to the next topic, is their drafting. If they go out here and hit on this 5th pick, I am liking what this team can be. And from what I'm seeing, after all the mock drafts that I have seen, Matas Buzelis, I think I said that right, Buzelis from the G League Ignite, a guy who has been very highly rated, right? I know this draft has been seen as weak, but he is one of the highly rated and credited players in this draft. He did have some 3-point issues in the G League. It kind of fell off compared to what people expected. From what I've heard, is that this guy was supposed to be a possible number 1 pick, possible number 2 pick, and coming out of high school, going into the G League, and then getting into the G League, your 3-point shot slipped, and so this is definitely a guy that I think you can really help your team, especially if his 3-point shot comes down, because again, that's really what you need at the end of the day. You want to get a guy who's going to go out and can shoot the three and just, again, help space the floor, help Cade Cunningham, and get busy. And any type of shooting, any type of scoring, any type of option to just take offensive pressure off Cade Cunningham and allow him to have more open looks is going to benefit you in the long run. And I think if that happens, you're going to see Cade Cunningham go from a 24-point per game scorer to 26, 27. I really think Cade Cunningham is going to take an elite leap this offseason. He's going to be up for a rookie extension. They're more than likely going to extend him. I really hope they do if they're smart, because if they don't, I'm one guy. I'm sitting here banging on the Lakers' door like, yo, let's go get Cade. I'm one of those guys. I have utmost faith in Cade Cunningham, one of my favorite youngest player in the NBA at this current moment. So I want him to succeed. I want to see the best for him. And then talking about my Los Angeles Lakers, obviously the Los Angeles Lakers signed the head coach JJ Redick to a 4-year, $32 million deal, right? And it's a lot of mixed emotions at this current situation. You hear people talked about Dan Hurley could have been a guy for the rebuild, could have been a guy for to help develop these young guys like Max Christie, Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, and get the best of these guys and help them reach their full potential. But it would have hurt LeBron, because LeBron would have been in a situation where they're focusing on developing players, and he's kind of in a position where he wants to win now, But this is kind of the same conversation that you're having if you brought in Dan Hurley as you did JJ Redick, because JJ Redick is a guy, when you look at JJ Redick, no head coaching experience. He's done the draft coverage. He's been on ESPN. He commentated the finals. He did all this stuff. He has a podcast of his own. He's a podcast with LeBron James. His mind of basketball. He's a high IQ player, right? A lot of big faces in the NBA field, are hyping him up and saying he can be a great player. Coach K is one of those guys. Stephen A. Smith is one of those guys saying that they think he can get the best from him. Magic Johnson said they can get something from him, So he's a high IQ guy. He's a high basketball guy, very smart basketball player, great basketball knowledge, and we've heard him talk about LeBron on his podcast about basketball and the things they would like to do together, things they don't like that coaches don't do that they think they should do more, So they have a little bit of themselves, to discuss, and they want to be out here, they're just out here talking basketball, and hopefully that can transition into the Los Angeles Lakers system, but it does worry me, is this the best choice for LeBron James' final years in LA? If he ends up signing with us, is this the head coach that we say, yes, LeBron James, we think we can win with you right now, we think we can get the best out of you, we can get the best out of AD, we can add some other pieces, develop some more guys, and we can compete, because we're still... again, I feel like the head coach has been the talk of everything in LA. You win a championship with Frank Vogel, the next year he's out. Like you guys called this guy the worst guy in the NBA, worst coach in the NBA after he just won a championship. And then same thing with Darvin Ham. He goes to the Western Conference Finals. Everyone says, man, this guy did a great job this year. And then next half of the season, we don't meet expectations. A couple questionable calls on rotations, and then all of a sudden everybody's calling for his head and he's out. So I feel like there's a lot of pressure on being the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Obviously, that's known, that's given with the Los Angeles Lakers, with their the fan base and the legacy and the prestige that they have built in Los Angeles, as one of the premier teams of the league, the premier team of the league, So there's a lot of expectations, there's a lot of things to go out there and compete, and especially because, Rob Pelinka did say he did want to stop, wasting our future draft capital on bringing in superstars, and he wanted to start to slow it down and bring in player to player and just continue to add to a team, And so is this something that LeBron James is going to want to be around, because LeBron James to me is going to, he's going to make he's going to show you how he feels, he's not going to keep it hidden. If he's not feeling very good, you're going to see it on the field, to see the way he acts, the same way when we were god-awful with Russell Westbrook, this guy was going out there playing me, didn't play any defense, and, always won the ball, just so I mean, it could be good, it could be bad. I'm praying, I'm hoping it could be great. A guy that even on the podcast he seems to go at LeBron. They kind of go back and forth, and he doesn't seem to be scared to speak up to LeBron based on basketball knowledge and IQ. So I think it could benefit us having a guy that's going to challenge and work with LeBron James, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what I think you should do. Expect the best out of everybody, no matter, you know what I'm saying? And then, you just had AD come off a remarkable playoff run, who we're expecting to come into a even better, more dominant form going forward. So I'm definitely looking forward to see how things could be. Do we go out here? Do we trade draft capital? Do we trade some assets and go get someone like a Trae Young, like a Spider Mitchell, like a Jimmy Butler, like a Zach LaVine? And out of those two lists, the only two that really got me going crazy is Trae Young and Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a guy who I would be okay with. I know his contract is not pretty. That's something that we probably want to take on. It'd hurt us a little bit, but him being the number 2 guy to take some weight off LeBron and let LeBron kind of cruise a little bit in the regular season is great. And I think Zach LaVine can be a great player, right? And I think you could possibly get him for a little bit cheaper. He's been injured this last year. His stock went down just a little bit, so I think you can get him for a cheaper cost, and you could add him to our team. Contract will be a little ugly, but I think you can make the best of it, right? A lot of our guys aren't really getting paid a lot of money right now, so you could really make it match and work things out. So I would like that. And then obviously Trae Young is just the AD Trae Young pick and roll would be absolutely insane. And then you finally get a guy who can close games for LeBron, right? And then you still have AD, one of the best rim defenders in basketball and paint protection. He can really ease the anchor to our defense. And I trust him to make up for what Trae Young can't do defensively, And again, like I've said, you had a team like Cleveland when you had Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. You just blitzed everybody and pressed them hard at the perimeter, made them go challenge your guy, roaming around the paint, roaming around the under the basket, right? And then so that's exactly what allowed Evan Mobley and Jared Allen to thrive, And I think that's very something similar the Lakers could use and add it to allow AD to thrive and to not suffer too much from Trae Young being a defensive liability, So it's definitely something, we can look at too. Those are the 2 guys I really have my mind on. Obviously, I know Donovan Mitchell is a great player, but me personally, I would feel more comfortable with Trae Young, with Zach LaVine, those type of guys. I think those 2 guys would be my number 2s. Like if we did trade and trade our future couple round picks, for a player, those would be the 2 guys that I would want on my team out of the ones that I've been hearing. Jimmy Butler, again, just doesn't really solve a lot of issues. You get a guy who doesn't really want to play in the regular season, just wants to get to the postseason, and then he shows up and, not a great shooter. He's okay in the regular season, so I don't know if it would really benefit us for what we need. We need someone that's gonna carry the logs and the boats in the regular season, And I think a guy like Trae Young, Zach LaVine can do that. And then the first trade of the 2024-2025 NBA offseason was Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, right? And I sat here and I love this for OKC. And I didn't even mind it for Chicago. I know Chicago again still has multiple guards. Kobe White was a guy that he after one conversation was in the conversation for most improved player. He took over when Zach LaVine wasn't in the game. I really seen him blossom into a true great player who's playmaking. He was shooting at a remarkable clip. And he blossomed into a great player, and then you also have Ayo Dosunmu. I hope I pronounced that right, but he also blossomed that post All-Star break into a reliable guard. Those 2 were the best two of the best guards they had on that team. You still have Lonzo Ball, who's technically still under the Chicago Bulls, right? You want to get a guy who can replace that Lonzo Ball void, and Josh Giddey's the guy to do that. You still have Zach LaVine, but again, I believe he will be traded this upcoming offseason. I hope he is to be traded, because you definitely got a bit of a reset right there. But Josh Giddey can be a guy who, you've heard it a lot. That OKC team is so good, is so deep that, you do expect some of these guys in OKC to, when they leave OKC, to blossom, to hit another step. People were talking about J-Dub. If he eventually decided to leave OKC, could he turn into a top 10 player? And people were putting him on that trajectory, right? And you look at a guy like SGA. You had to leave the Clippers, go to OKC as a young player in OKC, kind of get mentored by Chris Paul. Then you learned your game and you developed yourself as a player. And then you became who you became, right? So there's all these hypotheticals and ideas thinking about, if some of these players left OKC, they could blossom and turn into a James Harden type of guy, a guy who went from a very number 3, number 2 scorer on the team to now I'm looking at this guy could be a MVP of the league. I'm not saying Josh Giddey's going to be MVP of the league, but I do expect he can definitely take a jump and become a more dominant player, right? Because I do think there's still hope for him. Josh Giddey, again, was shooting the 3 from the second half of the season very, very well. And if you have Josh Giddey shooting the 3 again, you're going to be in great hopes. Like, I have very high expectations for Josh Giddey if he can consistently shoot the 3. His ability to rebound, play make, and he can still finish. He can still go out there and get a couple buckets. Obviously, there was just better players for what they needed in OKC, which was shooting around SGA. The spacing was like no other, right? So that's not what OKC needed, and that's exactly why the trade was moved. Alex Caruso, again, a guy who I trust to be one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, a guy who I trust after this upcoming year, who can, score for you a bit more than what he's been known to do in the past. This year, he decided to be more offensively aggressive, which made him look better, and, Chicago Bull fans were talking about this the other day. You were offered multiple first-round picks for Andre Drummond and Alex Caruso this upcoming year at the trade deadline, and you said no to both of them, right? Now you're not getting any draft capital, for guys that were very, very valuable. You could have got a couple picks for Drummond and for Alex Caruso, and then you got put in a situation where now, Andre Drummond's going to go leave in free agency. He's going to go to somewhere else and go be a backup center. And then you have Alex Caruso now who's traded for Josh Giddey. You don't get any draft capital. You have another guy who's eventually going to need to get paid, if you want to keep Josh Giddey around. So there's a lot of questions about the future of the Chicago Bulls, and what direction you want to go in. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, because Alex Caruso, listen, the OKC is already looking to extend Alex Caruso, which, again, I think is a great thing for him. He just is a winning basketball player. He's a basketball player that wins you games. When he was a part of the Los Angeles Lakers and we won our championship, he played such a crucial role defensively, offensively. He was doing a lot for us on that team, and he was a key reason why we got to where we got. And then, obviously, he got paid a bag by Chicago to go out there, So, again, I am hoping the best for Alex Caruso. I wish nothing but the best for him. I love him as a player, right? Josh Giddey, again, I hope he can kind of resurrect himself as a elite offensive threat in Chicago. And I know the spacing is going from the best spacing in the NBA to some of the worst spacing in the NBA, from OKC to Chicago. But I have hope, and I really do expect that Josh Giddey can make the best of the situation. I have a lot of hope in him to be a great player for Chicago or for another team if it doesn't work out here for him, So, again, I'm praying nothing but for these guys to succeed, and I hope nothing but the best. And then another offseason move, Malik Monk extended, right? 15 points per game, 5 assists, career high, was one of the best 6 men in the NBA last year, finished second in 6-man voting, 4 years, $78 million extension. And listen, this is everything for the Sacramento Kings. This shows that they are trying to keep and trying to build a core group, right? And what Malik Monk was able to do for the Sacramento Kings team alongside De'Aaron Fox was just remarkable. Malik Monk was coming into games, and when that second unit comes in, he comes in and gets after it, he gets busy, and then he had the explosion potential to bop out and give you 30, give you 40, Multiple times you've seen him go for 30 plus, multiple times, and a couple times you've seen him go for 40 and be the key reason you're in this game and the key reason you're winning this game, So he has a lot of, boom potential, in a game. Like, once he gets hot, his shot starts falling. You have the energy of the Sacramento Kings crowd. They're screaming, they're lit. De'Aaron Fox is hitting his shots, and then the energy is crazy. And this is one of those guys that Sacramento loves, Malik Monk, right? A guy who I loved in LA. I loved him as a player. I wish we would have kept him, and we looked at exactly what he turned into. And so I have high hopes from Malik Monk. I mean, he has just put everything together. His offensive scoring ability, his ability to play make, has been great. And he's not a defensive liability either. He's giving effort on the defensive end, which is all that you could ask at the end of the day, So I love this extension. I love that they brought him back. You're kind of trying to build this core, try to keep these core guys around, because we know how important six men can be on teams that winning teams. You need a guy to go out there and give you a burst off the bench, and Malik Monk is that guy to do that. So I'm happy that he got extended, he got paid, and now he's gonna be back for the next 4 years, and I love him alongside De'Aaron Fox. I think that backcourt is very, very good, and I expect them to take a huge, bounce back year and compete for the playoffs this year. But now we're finally going to get into some NFL discussion for today, right? Listen, the Kansas City Chiefs are going for a three-peat. They are coming out here. They are looking to do something that no NFL team has ever done, right? And you've heard a lot of hypotheticals about, can the Chiefs repeat? Can the Chiefs do this? Can blah, 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 or whatever, right? And I've sat around listening to people talk about only the Chiefs can beat the Chiefs, Only, nobody's going to beat the Chiefs. We're going to be in a better situation this year, So I'm going to give you my list of teams that I believe can beat the Kansas City Chiefs and end their three-peat hopes, their three-peat chances, right? And first and foremost is the Houston Texans, right? Listen, you have C.J. Stroud coming off a all-pro caliber year, a year where you weren't expected to do much, right? You know what I'm saying? You came out here, you won a playoff game, you won your division against a team like Trevor Lawrence, who had Jacksonville, who had just made the playoffs and won a playoff game last year. You had the Colts, who were building this roster and were supposed to be better than you guys, and you went out here and shocked the world, right? You had one of the best rookie seasons known to man. You were in the top 5 quarterback discussion for a little bit. There was moments where people were discussing you as MVP candidate. Can the Rookie of the Year also be the MVP of the league, So there was a lot of respect for this team, and you went out here, you found yourself the quarterback of the future, and you had a solid defense, a defensive-minded coach, got his defense to buy in. You drafted Will Anderson, who was phenomenal last year, defensive rookie of the year last year, right? And now you committed. You're saying, I found my guy of the future. Going into year 2, we're going to take advantage of that, rookie QB contract, and I'm going to add to this team. That's exactly what you did. You added Joe Mixon, who was a great back, very underrated back in the league. Stephon Diggs, who's regarded as a top 8 receiver the last 5 years of football. Everson Griffin, who I think had a career year last year, 17 sacks, 16 sacks, I believe. That could be a little too much, but he had a very great year last year. You brought him over. You got D'Amico Autry, Al Shazier, who both of them formerly played in San Francisco with D'Amico Ryans. So I love those additions for this team, and I expect big things for this team. I think this team is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals the first year they made it to the Super Bowl. They came in, they were a young team, young QB. They came out here, blasted onto the scene, and upset the Chiefs. I expect these guys to go out here and really compete. They're going to play them in the regular season, and more than likely they're going to have to meet up with either them or Cincinnati or the Ravens in the postseason. So we'll definitely see how it goes. Number 2 is the Cincinnati Bengals. Listen, I have said this since Joe Burrow has gotten to the league. I said Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in football. I said other than Patrick Mahomes, there's nobody better than him in the NFL, right? And the only issue with Joe Burrow is his injuries, is his injury prone, his health, right? You question, can he stay healthy throughout a full season? He's always banged up. He's always dealing with some sort of injuries. So I do expect Cincinnati to come out here. They address the O-line, I do expect Cincinnati to come out here and take more care of their quarterback, to come out here and make sure he lasts through the whole season, to get the best of him. But listen, you brought back T. Higgins, who again is a 1B type receiver. You bringing back Jamar Chase whenever you extend him, whatever, all that stuff. You're going to have Jamar Chase here. You're going to have a great team. You're going to have basically the same receiving core as you did last year. And I expect Joe Burrow to catch fire. He's already talked about it. He is, the Sith has risen. I believe the Jedi. He made some Star Wars related quote, all right, and I was absolutely in love with it, right? I was like, let's go, Joe Burrow. I'm right here, Joe Shiesty. So he is on a bounce back here. He has obviously talked about he needs to take care of his body and make sure he stays healthy, and he wants to compete. And we know that. We missed him for 2 years of his career already due to injury, so we don't want to see that happen again. Okay, and then last, the third team is the Baltimore Ravens. Listen. If you run the ball in the AFC Championship game, you are advancing to the Super Bowl, right? If you are running the ball, Lamar Jackson, and you're running the ball with this high explosive run team, the number one rush team offense in football. If you go out here and be true to who you are, you're sitting at the Super Bowl playing the San Francisco 49ers, who you blew out by 30 on Christmas Day. So again, you just got Derrick Henry. You brought back every other veteran, every other guy you need to sign and bring back. You're running this back basically flawless. You added in the draft, you added a couple players, right? But listen, adding Derrick Henry tells me one thing and one thing only, right? We are getting back to who we are. We are getting back to what we are going to be, and we're going to run the ball. And I expect Lamar Jackson to have a great year. I expect him and Derrick Henry to both have great years on the ground, right? I'm not expecting an MVP-like year from Lamar unless he goes for like 1,500 rushing yards, and that'd just be insane. But, I expect Derrick Henry to have a great year. Everyone thinks Derrick Henry's going to have a little bit of a down year. I don't. I think he's going to go for 1,400 yards, right? Behind that offensive line with Lamar Jackson, who attracts a lot of attention due to his ability to run. And I think Lamar Jackson's going to come down here and just move. He's gotten skinnier, so he says he's faster and he's feeling lighter on his feet. So I love this from Lamar Jackson, and I think they're going to get to it. They're going to come back to that, year 2, year 3 Lamar Jackson, where a lot of it's on the ground. And I love that for them. Be true to who you are. You don't have to play outside your box to come out here and prove to anybody else who you think you are, who you're supposed to be. All right? So again, I'm happy for the Baltimore Ravens. I'm glad that you are coming out here and you are staying true to who you are, because this is exactly what you need. It's exactly what you needed last year. You ran the ball about 4 times in the first half with success and never ran the ball again. You continue to throw the ball, and I expect that to change. And if it doesn't, you have a huge issue with coaching, whoever's calling plays and all that stuff. Like this is your time. You have the team. The roster is exactly the same, if not better. And that's what people were saying about the Kansas City Chiefs team this year. It's going to be better, So take advantage of it. Stay true to who you are, right? And the last topic of discussion today, and I've seen people talking about this again, one of the most controversial topics in the NFL this last year, in the last 2 years, really, and is Brock Purdy elite, right? Brock Purdy made it to the NFC Championship, rookie year, undefeated as a starter. Other than the champs, he broke his elbow. He made it to the Super Bowl. He played a solid game against the best quarterback in the league, right? You lose to the Kansas City Chiefs due to not knowing the overtime rules, right? You go out there, you have the ball last, and Patrick Mahomes does what Patrick Mahomes does to everybody, right? You score in the last play. 20-5 as a starter. Last year, 5th in passing yards, 3rd in passing touchdowns, 4th in completion percentage. Right? When you look at quarterbacks and when you look at what makes quarterbacks elite, right, it's the ability to, in my mind, right, it's the ability to win, it's the ability to make remarkable throws, it's the ability to kind of carry a team and uplift a team. Your team gets better when you're playing with them, right? The Cincinnati Bengals are better with Joe Burrow. The Kansas City Chiefs are better with Patrick Mahomes than Alex Smith, right? Josh Allen, when he's playing great, this team is better. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to see this team play good without him, right? They need Josh Allen out there to be the team that we all know they can be, okay? So when I look at Brock Purdy, and I'm sitting here, and I know the numbers scream great. I know the numbers scream superstar, right? But when you are limited with the things you can do on the football field, right? And you're not elevating your team. That's what makes Brock Purdy not elite, right? And listen, people used to say this about Tom Brady because that's like the best comparison you could really get. And I know that's comparing the GOAT to Brock Purdy, right? Which kind of, right? But just listen here, okay? Is Tom Brady's early years when he was winning Super Bowls, they blamed it on his defense. Said his defense was so remarkably great. They said he was only forced to make a couple throws. He didn't uplift his team, but he was game managing and making the right plays here and there and doing what it was needed. They were running the ball. You're hitting his checkdowns. Boom. Right? And then they said that the entire year about his career, the year he was winning Super Bowls, and all this stuff. And he just played like a game manager type guy. Patrick Mahomes does that this year. You know what I'm saying? And boom, and then all of a sudden, now Patrick Mahomes is the greatest ever because he won with the team he won with, right? But I'm not trying to get into a GOAT versus Patrick Mahomes conversation, okay? But if you think Brock Purdy can do what either of those guys did to some extent, then you can consider him elite. But I don't think if you put him in an offense where everything plays through him, where you're not playing with 11 All-Pros on the fucking offense. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, I'm not going to disrespect him for what he's done and what he's done in this type of role with this type of pressure, right? But when you are the biggest liability on your offense, you know, you are the biggest red question mark. You're the biggest red flag. Like, you are the one person on your team that could hurt your team. Boom. Like, you're the one unknown to this offense, right? You could go out there and you could, you know, shit the bed, and then everybody's gonna come out here and say you're absolutely awful. You know, like you are the one person that benefits from the team. You're not allowing the team to benefit from you. You know, you have one of the best running back in football. You have, when he did get signed, Deebo Samuel is considered one of the best athletes in football. Give him the ball, he'll do a lot of work. George Kittle, one of the best tight ends in football. Trent Williams, the best offensive tackle in football. You know, Brandon Ayuk, top 8 receiver in football. You know, so you have all this great talent around him, and when you look at him and ask if he's an elite quarterback, can he do this stuff with a worse roster? You know, if you pay this guy $50 million a year, $55 million a year, and you go out there and you can't spend that money on other positions, are you able to compete with him as your starting quarterback, where all that money is allocated to him and you cannot spend it to go pay for another edge rusher? You cannot go spend it to go get Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, and all these guys. Trent Williams going to be gone. You know, like there is, you know, how good is Brock Purdy in a situation like that? If you put Purdy in a Justin Herbert situation, how good is he? You know, and I know that's not the right thing to do, but I'm just saying it's true, right? Because if you look at that San Francisco 49ers system, there is possibly 8 other quarterbacks I would put in that situation that would thrive and succeed in that offense, right? Kirk Cousins is a guy that would succeed in that offense. Jared Goff, he would succeed in that offense. He basically does in Detroit, you know? Tom Brady would have flourished in that offense. Let me tell you, Tom Brady would have made that thing look OD, all right? Okay. So that's all. When you start looking at Brock Purdy, and you can try to make him seem better than what he is, there is a physical limitation. There is a limitation on his ability to what he can do. Yes, he showed some stuff outside the pocket, doing, you know, using his feet to extend plays and make something happen out of nothing. And I give him credit for everything that he's done. But when you can go out here and talk about elite, you know, that's when, listen, you won't know if Brock Purdy's elite until you lose some of the players around your team, you know, because everybody was saying about Tom Brady. They said, we're not going to go, you know, Tom Brady's not elite. The defense is carrying him. Then, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then once you lose and once you got nobody on your roster and you're still winning Super Bowls, you know, it's like the first time Patrick Mahomes did, everyone's like, oh, this guy's the greatest ever. Tom Brady's been doing that his entire career, winning with nobodies on offense. You know, obviously he had somebodies, right? But there was a lot of times where he had nobodies where he won. You know, didn't even win a Super Bowl with Randy Moss. You know, one with Gronk, one without Gronk, you know, one without Gronk and without Julian Edelman, you know, like, so there's a lot of stuff like that I'm not even going to get into, but, you know, Brock Purdy can prove something this year, though, for sure. The Chiefs are the only team to return to the Super Bowl after losing the Super Bowl, right? And other than that, I mean, listen, the Cincinnati Bengals have not been back yet, right? The San Francisco 49ers have not been back yet since last year, right? But no team who lost the Super Bowl went back that next year, right? And so you know, the numbers are saying you aren't going to make it. The numbers are saying you aren't going to be as good of a team this year, right? The last time you made the Super Bowl, you had a losing record? I think you had 5-6 wins, you know? So you can, I mean, there's some things you could prove this year, but again, when it comes down to it, I don't think Brock Purdy's an elite quarterback, and that is it. You know, I think he fits the system. He does well in the system, but he limits the system. You know, like if you didn't have fucking 2 all-pro wide receivers out there and an all-pro tackle and an all-pro tight end and an all-pro running back, you know, how good would you really be? And that means a lot. You can say whatever you want, Nani fans. You could defend him. You could say he did a little XYZ, but when you remove all these great players, what can he do to elevate those players that aren't so great? You know, and that's all I want to see. That's it. Drew Brees was able to do it in New Orleans. Peyton Manning was able to do it in Indy. You know, and later in his career, you had got an old Wes Welker. You had Eric Decker, who disappeared after he started playing with him. You know, like, so we'll definitely see. But with that being said, that was the last topic of discussion for today. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications. If you're watching this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you like the show, follow the show, give it a 5-star rating. It helps the algorithm. And if you enjoy the content being presented here, make sure to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend. Shout out Kenny Beecham. We out.